Hello, and welcome to the Science Fiction and Fantasy Marketing Podcast, the show where we help you establish your author brand, increase the size of your audience, and sell more books. I'm Lindsay Baroker, and I'm here with my two co-hosts.
I'm Jeff Poole.
And I'm Joe Lalo.
And it's just the three of us this week. We're attempting to record live, something we used to do a lot more often, but YouTube was a little flaky on us. So now we only risk it if we don't have a guest, because if we have to re-record everything, it's, less of an ordeal. Or it's still more of an ordeal, but I don't feel bad about it. So that's what's important. So this week, we're going to be answering listener questions. You guys were kind enough to chime in on Twitter and ask us some stuff about marketing, some stuff about rapid release, doing serials, when it's time for a series to end. And we've got quite a few good questions here, so we will attempt to give good answers. As always, in the eye of the beholder. Just as a reminder before we jump in, we'll share our own news here since we haven't been on for about a month and a half. We had Brian Meeks on last week with all the questions you were ever wondering about on Amazon ads. And at the end of the show, he was kind of like, oh, can I give you a code in case your listeners want to sign up? He's got a big course on Amazon ads in case the teaser episode, the 1 hour he talked to us wasn't enough and you really want to dig into it. So the coupon code is you can get 30% off with it, and it's see if I can say our own initials, guys, SFFMP30. And I put that in the show notes for last week's episodes, and I will put it there this week too. What are we, guys? Episode 199 this week. And we don't make anything if you sign up for his course. So it's just if you were going to do it anyway, or you were thinking about it and you're on the fence, grab that code and get a discount. One more piece of big news that I thought was worth mentioning before I let the guys talk here. They're quietly muted over there. Is that you may have heard, for those of you who are publishing wide, that Kobo has gotten books into Walmart now. But I've kind of been hearing through the grapevine, I actually haven't went and looked at my own books, that Walmart will not post free books. So all of us with a perma-free book 1, that's going to be kind of problematic because all that's going to show up in the store is like books 2 through 8 that are full priced. So I'm just going to be keeping an eye on that. If nothing changes, I'm going to wait and hear if anybody's actually selling books at Walmart. If I hear like, oh, I made $3,000 last night at Walmart, last month at Walmart, then I'm probably going to consider raising my perma-free book 1s to 99 cents on Kobo so that they will show up in the Walmart store, because it's a little weird that they won't even show up. Unless Kobo maybe implements something where you can select to be like free at their store and 99 cents in Walmart. We shall see. But before we jump into the questions, do you guys have any news that's been going on last month or two that you'd like to share or get comments on from us?
Not too terribly much here. I'm still hard at work on my, I don't know what number it is, next fantasy novel. I'm having people bug me left and right when my next mystery is coming out. And that's actually going to be more than likely in December, because that's going to be my next NaNoWriMo project. Another audiobook mystery one is in the works. Thinking about doing another fantasy audiobook. But that's about it for me right now.
As for me, I've spent the last week and a half trying to untie a project I wrote 90,000 words in a project about a year and a half ago, and then had to set it aside to do 3 or 4 other projects. And so I've been working on that. It took an amazingly long time to figure out what the heck I was planning to do, because I found the manuscript but not the outline. So it was an adventure in reverse engineering an outline. I've never done that before. I've learned as a result not to sideline something that is over 90,000 words, because it's hard to get back into it. Having said that, this is going to get sidelined again because NaNoWriMo is going to come up before I'm finished, I'm sure, and I need to do NaNoWriMo. I think I usually do a free wrench entry. For the last 5 years, I've done a free wrench entry. But I think I might do an urban fantasy this time and try to do it as a series starter for a new series. So that's the future. And I just released The Adventures of Russell and Eddie, which is a young adult-ish fantasy story that's a spin-off of one of my other series. Technically, it was a spectacularly unsuccessful launch, but that's because it was already out as a free blog. And it was also released as part of a bundle that I was just in. So everyone who would have bought it on launch day actually bought it in the bundle. So technically it had an average release, but it doesn't look like that from the rankings. And other than that, my sales sort of hit a wall this year. So I did a lot of experimental stuff, and a lot of my books I released are books 4 and 5 in a series. So I'm going to be spending the rest of this year trying to set up a next year that will be a little bit more on target and to market. So that's what I'm working on now.
All right. Well, I totally hear you on the huge project that you set aside, because I did the same thing with Chains of Honor 3 a couple years ago. I wrote about 25,000 words, so I'm not as into it as you are. But apparently I didn't think it was a good idea to do an outline, which I usually do now. So I really don't know what I was thinking, except that this was 2 or 3 years ago. And so that's kind of one of the reasons I've been a little stalled on that. And I'm thinking at this point, I may just scrap the starter thing and just kind of reread books 1 and 2 and start again from scratch with an outline this time. But I wouldn't do that for 90,000 words. That's a really big investment in the story. As far as what's going on in my world, besides that, I released 3 books kind of back to back in a new high fantasy mystery series, a bit of a romance over the course of the series. So it's another one of those things that doesn't really fit tidily into any of the categories on Amazon. I've stuck it in epic fantasy and romantic fantasy, even though it's going to take them 6 books, as is usual for my my series, for the characters to actually hook up. And so it's always, we actually have a question in this coming up, kind of what do you do when you don't really fit that neatly in any of the categories? And the answer is stick them in the best possible places and hope for the best, and realize that it's probably not going to be the kind of thing that gets sticky on Amazon. And I think that's definitely been the case with mine. I mean, I've sold good amounts of books. It's not like I'm going to lose money. It's not like I'm going to stop the series early. I'm planning to do 6 of them. But I can tell, I kind of, with the dragon stuff last Christmas when I launched the Heritage of Power series, that definitely stuck better. I think it was in the 200s there for a while overall in the whole store. And I haven't even looked at this one. I'm just like, well, it's still selling, but that's okay. And I noticed too that the Amazon ads, and Brian would say we're not supposed to look at the ACOS number, the average cost of sale, but it's part of this could just be that, like what he was talking about, is costing a lot more now to be visible with the ads. But I notice they're converting less profitably. So I'm probably going to let things tailor off. And I've been tinkering with the Amazon ads a little bit, and I have an old series that always did really well, the box set with BookBub and everything, and it's doing pretty well with the Amazon ads. So I think I'm just going to let that run for a while, and that can be my thing. Other things with this series, I decided to go non-exclusive with the audiobook, and I was able to actually get the first audiobook out kind of right after, or right even with the release of the ebook, and that's helpful. As we've talked about before, it's tough if the audiobook doesn't come out to like 9 months and things have kind of worn off by then. And the second book will be coming pretty soon. And so I clicked the non-exclusive with Audible, which means I'm making 25% per sale there, Amazon and iTunes, instead of 40% per sale, but I can sell it anywhere else. So I went ahead and tried Findaway Voices, which we actually have somebody coming on next week, I think, from Findaway. So we'll be able to ask a lot of questions on how to market and where all the books are going through them. And I'm also talking with Christine from Kobo, who we've had on the show before, and I'm going to be one of the first people to direct upload the audiobooks there. So, we'll see. I was excited when I was in Google Play the other day looking up some ebooks that there was my audiobook. It's the only audiobook I have there, because everything else that I've done through Audible or that Podium Publishing has done, I believe is all exclusive. So I will see it. Let me ask you, Joe, because I know you did this before me. Have you made money? Because I don't know yet. Just because it's in Google Play, it had 1 4-star review. So I was like, oh, somebody maybe read it.
I have made money. My audiobooks have never been a big seller because they tend to lag so long after. I only have 2 that are actually I have sales numbers on, and they're a book 4 and a novella. But I made about as much money from Findaway Voices as I made from Amazon. So I don't know if that's representative if you're going to start matching your income from the other one, but yeah, I certainly made money off of 2 books that should not have been making a terrible amount of money in audio.
All right. Well, I will be curious when I get the first sales report, or maybe down the line a bit, because I think it may take a while since I've never had a presence in these other stores before with the audiobooks. But I will be curious if I make enough to kind of counter that 15% I'm giving up through Audible. I'm certainly hoping so. It does feel like more competitors are going to be viable and coming in the future. So I'm not sure this was the best series to pick since, like I said, it's not really to market, and it's, it's okay. It's not like it's so obscure. It's not like it's a pizza oven dragon or let's pick on Joe today. But, it's just, it's not like there's this gorgeous dragon on the front or something that's going to automatically sell the audiobook. But you do get to pick your price for Find a Way. Joe, did you pick a lower price than
I picked a lower price. I tried to get it closer to the price of the paperback. And also, it's worth pointing out that Google Play discounts your audiobooks as aggressively as they discount your ebooks, and I think you still get paid the same royalty. So you might see a surprising amount of income from Google Play. I don't know. I haven't looked at my sales to see if they slice it up between the income. So I don't know if I can tell you exactly how much of my Find a Way income came from Google Play, but I know Google Play is really trying hard to sell some audiobooks.
If Google Play adjusts the price down as they do with everything else for an audiobook, will Amazon price match?
I haven't seen them do that.
I've been wondering too if I would get a Nastagram, because I made my audiobook $12.95, so it's not super low. Well, they've sent them many times to me. If the French, version of this ebook is $1 more than in the French Amazon store. Is there a French Amazon store? I think there is. But so yes, I haven't gotten anything from them yet, so I'll be curious about that too. Right now it's at $12.95, so it's lower than typical for an audiobook, and I may drop it even lower when I get the second book out, just to see if that same kind of strategy works to sell audiobooks as it does to sell ebooks with a, like a 99-cent book one. To answer Kevin's question, I'm sorry the puppy is not here. She's still way too distracting for me to just have roaming around the house during the podcast, especially if we don't have a guest and I plan to talk. My parents are nice enough to pet sit on the other side of town, so no distractions. And I hope to show her off on the show someday, but she is so crazy, just crazy. She has so much stamina, you wouldn't even believe it. I had to start taking her out for like an hour every morning with my other dogs pretty early on. You're apparently not supposed to take dogs for that much exercise, but she's insane, so it's necessary.
How old is she?
She's just about 4 months now. She's already 30 pounds. She's like getting big too. She's got big paws and big ears. If you guys are curious, I've been posting some pictures on Instagram and Facebook, so you can stalk my puppy there. All right, I guess that is about it for my news. Last thing I was going to mention is I've been tinkering a little bit on Facebook on my author page to try to foster engagement by asking some questions. It's hard for me to, I tend to see that as hokey when when other people do it, so I don't like to do a lot of that stuff. But I've just, I asked it like yesterday, are you going to be in NaNoWriMo? And I've asked a couple questions interspersed with just regular updates. And I definitely have noticed, some of them will get as much engagement as like half of my, I think I've got 8,000 some likes, and some of them have had a reach of 4,000 something. I don't know about these people that are really topical and get a reach of like 200,000, like way beyond their fan base. But for me, that's more than typical. And I've noticed that even when I just do the update posts that I wouldn't think would get that much engagement, usually maybe they would get like 2 or 3 comments, that they have been getting more comments. So I think it's helping, at least as far as getting more of my people who have liked my page to see my posts without doing any paying for boosted posts. Do you guys do any tinkering with your Facebook author page to try to get more engagement?
I probably should. I really don't.
I often, when I'm trying to get more engagement, which is basically whenever I make a post, I suppose, I try to make sure that I'm asking a question as the last thing, or at least as the last thing you can see before it sort of truncates. and I try always to have an image, even if it doesn't really need one. I find that the images tend to perform a little bit better.
Yeah, I've been grabbing some of the like royalty-free stock photos of like books and stuff. Like when I asked about NaNoWriMo, I got a typewriter that you don't have to pay for. And I actually have started accumulating some from the I think iStock Photo is where I've got a subscription or something. So I grab cool dragons and I reuse them so that it's worth it. I guess they're not too expensive. And I've found also that helps. And I heard this on another show that Facebook really doesn't want to encourage people to leave their site. And so I've really noticed, I've done a couple like links to videos like on Wired or something like, hey, what do you guys think about this sci-fi thing? And it's like they get less engagement, even if I ask a question, than just one of my regular updates. It really feels like Facebook is just kind of throttling it. Like, no, you will not click on this video and leave Facebook. It's not allowed.
Yeah, at this point, I only put links and stuff that I'm going to boost anyway.
Yeah.
I will tell you, just
go ahead.
to circle back to the audiobooks, I have the audiobooks that I don't set the price for, or the Book of Deacon is $22.99, and Google Play has discounted it to $14.95, and I haven't received any nasty grams. And the ones I do control the price for, the Audible edition for one of them is almost $30, and the one that I priced is $10. And again, nobody has complained. So, but again, take that with a grain of salt, because I'm not exactly burning up the charts with these. So I might be just below the threshold of who cares.
I was kind of guessing that Amazon might not complain because we're not publishing our audiobooks directly to Amazon. They're getting it basically through a distributor. So it might be kind of a different ball of wax, whatever that saying actually means. All right, shall we jump into some listener questions? I think we shall. Troy wants to know, what's the best lag time between books in a trilogy for rapid release? Is it best to dump them all at once, one a week, one every 2 weeks, I guess is what that means, or longer in between? These questions come in through Twitter, so sometimes they have people abbreviate, of course. So what's the best lag time if you're doing a trilogy? Have you guys experimented with rapid release stuff?
Well, I've never actually had a trilogy, written the whole trilogy and not released them all at the same time. Closest I've done is a duo set there where I left a cliffhanger on it. I released them about a month apart, and it did very well for me. So I would probably do like one a month for 3 months straight. That's a good way to build up hype.
Yeah, I would say like if you have them all done and you're trying to really do a rapid release launch, I would say 1 or 2 weeks between, no longer than a month, but probably, and not less than a week. That's what I would say. So say 2 weeks, split the difference.
Right. With a trilogy, I might go a month apart. It kind of depends on what your goal is. If you have like hopes of being on the hot new releases list in some categories, like if you think you can sell enough to appear there, then one a month, that could possibly keep you in the list for 90 days, because they do like 30 days before you drop off, I think. Is that right? I haven't even looked for a long time. I think it's 30 days. Another thing to consider is if you're going to do Kindle Unlimited and you think it's possible that like all 3 books combined, if you released them really quickly, you might get like an all-star bonus. That's kind of why I released my last 3 books, or first 3 books in the new series only a week apart, and started towards the end of August. So I thought, well, maybe in September with the combined sales, I might get that lowest tier. Typically, I'll get like a bonus for complete total pages read, and then also maybe a book bonus for one of the books. I'm not sure if that'll happen this time, since this hasn't really killed it for me, but that's something to consider. Like if you think you've got enough of an audience, you need at least well over, I think it's close to 2 million page reads for a book to qualify. And man, the last time I got it, I think I needed like 5 million total to get like the $1,000 one. And I have enough readers in the UK that I think I got the 500 pounds one too, and the book bonus. So it can be, usually when you're selling that much, you're making a whole pile through KU anyway. So it's like, oh, well, this is just a nice little bonus. But some people target them. And, if you're really good and can get the higher level bonuses, like I think it's 5,000 if you're above 50, if you're in the like it's 50 through 100, you only get 1,000. But anyway, so that's something to consider. Are you trying to get those numbers? And you know with yourself when your current audience, if you have a shot or not. But if not, I might go for once a month. A lot of the rapid release stuff is kind of just start a new series, and so you're going to do 1, 2, 3, and like I'm working on book 4 right now. I would actually have 4 almost ready to go, but because have no focus, I went off and wrote a standalone sci-fi novel, and that is going to be coming out in between. Do as we say, not as we do, guys. Do as our guests do. But so I wouldn't rush to do like 3 in 3 weeks if you're not going to be publishing more after that, unless, like I said, you want to try for some bonuses, all-star bonuses. All right, next question, kind of along the same lines from MG. In your ideal rapid release schedule, how many days, weeks, or months apart would you release each new novel in a science fiction series? I would just kind of basically we answered it. But again, if you're going to do like 10 books, doing 3 right off the bat could be a good way to go. And then especially if you've got enough to keep going, every month or 2 afterwards, you know how fast you write and if that's plausible or not. What do you guys, you guys have any different answers on that?
It's pretty much the same for me. I would just keep doing this like the same, 1 month, depending on how many books you have to release right in a row. I would still do it about a month apart. It gives enough time to build up steam.
Yeah, I think a month is probably best.
It's if you're not somebody who's writing a novel month, like if you're a normal person, basically, you do want to be careful not to do like 3 back to back to back and then not have anything else for like 8 months. So the idea is to help you build momentum and then keep riding that momentum as you release more books in the series. So nothing wrong with holding them back, but maybe hold back the next one too, so that you can kind of do your rapid first 3 and then a 4th one a month later. And I think science fiction, I think it's all going to be pretty similar in all the genres. Romance is super competitive, so whatever you can do there, if you're doing like paranormal romance or something, to give yourself an edge, that may be with the more voracious readers like those guys, that may be where the 1 a week to start things off could really help out. All right, next question is from John. Do you have any tips for marketing epic fantasy novellas or novella serials? Have you guys tinkered with serials? I can't remember.
I have not.
I tinkered with serials a little bit in a couple of different ways. What almost always ends up happening for me is I make my money on the collected edition later. One of them, I released the first chapter in the way that I intended, and then just decided, the heck with it, I'll just wrap it all up and release it as a novel. So that was not really a serial so much as a novel with a teaser. But generally speaking, what I've found is the best way is, because you're breaking up a book into a bunch of smaller books, you try to keep the price as low as possible. Ideally, I mean, even if you were charging 99 cents a chapter, you're going to end up charging a lot more for the run of serials than you will for the novel. So you don't really want to, gouge people too much. And also, in this case, I think you should be really very consistent. Like, you're going to do a serial, have as much of it available as possible, and try to make it a big deal and like an event that about once a month or about 2 weeks, however long you choose to do it. Try to do it like on the same day every month or at the same time every 2 weeks or whatever, so that you can sort of build an expectation for each one. So those would be my my tips.
Sounds good. And we actually had a podcast probably 3 months ago, 2 or 3 months ago, with Sarah K.L. Wilson, who's doing the Dragon School serial, and she's been keeping them selling. So you might go listen to that episode for fantasy specific advice. She's doing a serial. Each one's about 100 pages, it looks like, and she is doing $2.99 per episode, I guess you would call it. And she's in KU. I think it would be tough to make $3 work for a 100-page installment every 2 weeks if you did not have the Kindle Unlimited thing also, so that subscribers got them for free, essentially. I've done one serial with my pen name, which was 6 parts and about I think it ended up being 130,000, the final story. And it was very much, I released them, I believe, once a week. And then I think I mentioned before in the show, I kind of regret that I released the omnibus or the collected serial a short time after. because it seemed to kind of kill momentum on the serial itself, which actually sold pretty well. I think that at the time I did not have any of my stuff under my name in Kindle Unlimited, and that was my first time getting an all-star bonus was with that serial. Because usually my pen name, most people write pen names because they want to sell better. My pen name is more just a passion, fun project on the side. They've sold pretty well in the past, but it's not like I started it like, oh, sci-fi romance, it's going to make me rich. But so the point was once a week with a shorter serial can work. I think Sarah was doing every 18 days. I don't remember exactly why she picked that. I would probably do like every other Tuesday or something like that, like Joe was saying. Really train people to know when the next episode is coming and make sure you get it out. And then the question asked, John was talking about either novella serials or fantasy novellas. So just so it's in your mind when you're writing, those are going to be really different things. People are going to expect novellas to be a complete story with each one. And then the serials you can get away with. And I intentionally wrote that serial to have kind of a cliffhangery final scene for each one. So people would be wanting to, like really eager to get the next installment. And those were in Kindle Unlimited. So I think I only did mine at 99 cents. So I believe it was 6 99-cent installments. And then the total one I made $4.99. So it was a deal. And probably like Sarah, most of my money was coming from Kindle Unlimited rather than people buying the installments. So it's almost like Kindle Unlimited is kind of ready-made for serials. So not saying you can't do them on other sites, but you might have success if you're doing it in KU. As far as tips for marketing them, aside from, I guess I was talking about releasing them, just that make sure your cover, you probably, I've seen with serials, people will basically, it's the same cover and then they change the color scheme. That's actually what I did with my sci-fi serial. It was the same guy, his big old burly naked shoulder on there, and the same space station on everyone. And we just changed the font color for each one and gave it a different name. And so I think you can get away with that with serials because you don't want to have to like buy a $500 cover for each installment of a serial. I know Sarah was doing, we had that whole thing on rendering characters. I'm not sure I still entirely understand that, but I think she was getting her dragons pretty cheaply, compared to like custom illustrations. So that is worth considering. And the nice thing with marketing is that if you're doing like an installment every 2 weeks, you don't feel like you're hitting up your list all the time. That is one thing with releasing a book every week. I don't even know if I email my list for the third book in this series. I'll probably mention it the next time I have some other news. Oh, by the way, because I felt like I'm not somebody who mails my list every week. But, every 2 weeks, that seems like you're not quite as all over buy my stuff all the time. So I would probably go with 2 weeks myself, especially epic fantasy if they're going to be a little longer than like a 20,000 word installment. Like for Joe and possibly me, epic fantasy novellas might be like 80,000 words. I just wrote a short story that ended up at 21,000 words. So, all right. Do you guys have any more thoughts on the serial stuff, or can move on to the next question?
I say we move on.
Yeah.
All right. Just like I've never done a serial. I don't care about serials. All right. Jen actually had 3-4 questions for us because she knew we were going to be eager to have lots of stuff to talk about. So her first one is, how do you decide when a series and its spin-offs should end? You guys talk.
I would say based on the sales numbers. As I know we've talked about this before, if you're releasing book 6, book 7, book 8, and it's easier to market the first of a brand new series or whatnot. So but I mean, yes, you're trying to attract more people into your series there, but it's easier to market like a brand new book there. So if it's still bringing in lots of money and you're still happy with it, go right ahead. But like in my case, my Tales of Lantari, I got through 6 of them and I was realizing, you know what, it's easier to actually market for another one. So I created another series based in the same world and it took off from there. So that's my answer.
Yeah, I think it comes down to basically the same answer. I think it comes down to enthusiasm. If you have a lot of fans and a lot of sales history, you can pretty much tell when people are still excited for the next book in the series. So when their enthusiasm runs out, then it's probably time to wind it down. If you don't have a lot of sales history and you don't have a lot of fans, then it's when your enthusiasm runs out, because, especially when you're trying to get the books out there, volume and quality are going to be very important. And if you're just trying to slog your way through book 9 of a series that you're not really that into anymore, you're not doing anyone any favors. So measure it by enthusiasm, I would say.
Right. For me, the one I've tried a couple spin-offs where the first one I tried was all new characters, like on a different continent. So basically, it had nothing to do with the first series, and I was able to market it as a standalone. It did fine. That's the series that I'm on book 3 with the 25,000 words and no outline. So it wasn't a huge seller. I had hoped for more. Now my spinoff from my Dragon Blood world was Heritage of Power, and that was the one I published starting last Christmas or so, and those did quite well. And with that one, it does have the characters from the original series in it. They're more side mentor characters in it, and there are 2 original heroes. And I have had a lot of people who came in through that series without having read the other ones first, and then they went back and read the other ones afterwards. So it was like I accidentally did it right that time. And as far as how many you should do, you know yourself. Is money more important? Is loving the project more important? I kind of had it in my head I was going to do 5 books, and then 5 books I wrapped up with a marriage of some of the older characters, and it seemed like a good stopping point to me. Especially because in fantasy, especially, you can make these characters that after a while their powers develop, if they're like a wizard or something, and then they're like super powerful, and then it becomes hard to make believable danger for them. So I kind of had that issue. Like with book 5, the guy's like half dragon, so of course he's gonna have, and he's realized it at this point and is learning his powers. So that's why I stopped it there. But I could have kept going because they were selling well, and so it's just going to be really kind of a personal decision. Enthusiasm, I may go back and do another spinoff in that world. Like Jeff was saying, it's easier to market a book 1. And if you write your spinoff in such a way that new people can jump into it and don't have to have read the previous series, I think that's where you want to be careful. You want to make sure if it's a book 1, it's a genuine, they can jump in here as a starting point. So it should end when you want it to end is the rambling answer to that question. Okay, this one's kind of for me, unless you guys have some romances. I don't know. How does Lindsay keep romance from overtaking an adventure story? All right, I will answer, and you guys can chime in.
Here.
You must have some romance going on in those stories, guys.
Not enough to say like, oh yes, this is a romance book.
Well, that's how most of my stuff is. I occasionally do one where it's a complete love story in one book. And then it's kind of you've got your formula, and people will expect there to be quite a bit of romantic bits. I actually my tendencies are more towards like the action and the plot and then the romance is kind of happening on the side. So for me, it's actually more a matter of, am I putting in enough of the romance stuff to please readers that picked it up because, oh, it's a fantasy romance. I almost never advertise stuff under my name, the pen name's a different story, as being romance, because that's why I was mentioning with my new series, I'm like, I'm going to put this in romantic fantasy, mostly because I don't have another category for it. And it kind of fits because there's romance over this series. But so I'm kind of the opposite, actually. I'm more likely to have the adventure take over the whole story, and then it's hard to fit in bits where like, here's the characters should be like kissing by now, we're at 50%. So, and it's all in the eye of the beholder, of course. If somebody doesn't like romance and they pick up one of my books, even if it's developing over 8 books, they may think there's too much romance. So I would just say, as far as if you're having that problem of it's overtaking things, just make sure every scene is doing something to move the story forward. One of the things, and this is not just romance, that I often see with newer writers, is you've kind of got the characters hanging out around the campfire chatting because you love doing banter. And I enjoy banter too, but if nothing else happens in the scene, it probably needs to go. You got to be careful with the pacing. Do you guys have any thoughts on just romance or maybe character bromance? You must have, I know you guys have done some kind of that stuff. Too much of it, slowing down the plot, maybe?
I would say if you have too much of it, you run the risk of slowing down the plot. Um, I would say, I mean, if you're really trying to target like the romance readers there, you'll definitely want to like make some mention of it in the blurb, I would think, to give the people a heads up. Or for those that don't like romance, give them a heads up that you might encounter a little bit of this. That way there's no surprises and it's reflected in the reviews. It's just my opinion.
Yeah, I have to. The rule of make sure every scene moves the plot forward is something that is very easy to overlook earlier in your book career, and it's a very simple rule to follow. You can, like any rule, you can break it if you want, but as long as every scene, every chapter, contains, meaningful motion toward the conclusion, or at least ramping up the excitement and that, then I think you're gonna probably be you're okay with pace at that point. But again, too much romance is not something I've ever had anybody complain about in any of my stuff.
Right, and we will say if you are doing a specific romance, like this is a paranormal romance, and you're trying to appeal to that category, then the characters getting together is plot. Like it's okay. You're gonna have to have your, you know, even if it's a sweet romance and the sex is off the page or it comes later, people will expect some advancement of the relationship and consider that part of the plot. So there doesn't always have to be bombs going off and cyborgs storming the spaceship. So just you'll know whatever you're targeting. Romance readers are actually really hard to please. So that's kind of why I don't say most of my stuff is it. Because if they're expecting a happily ever after one book and you're going to make them wait till 8 books, they may not be pleased with you. All right, next question. For Facebook marketing, do you find one demographic marker more useful than its counterparts? I.e., is it effective to target age, income, etc., or are your best results from targeting by interest? Do you still boost posts? What have you guys found in tinkering with Facebook?
I've tried boosting posts a few times. I've discovered it doesn't really do too much for me, so I've stopped doing it. When I target on the Facebook ads, I don't really target certain demographics because that's one thing with my writing. My writing is considered lighthearted, so I can pretty much target just about everybody. So I don't put any restrictions in there. But I would imagine if you have a set demographic in mind, you'll want to. It's just that I don't necessarily do that, and it seems to work all right for me.
As for me, I do a boosted post whenever I have a link I want to share, and basically I only want to share a link when I am doing a release. So very few boosted posts over the course of a year. As for targeting, I usually target by interest. I have found, however, for a while I was trying to put together like a successful Facebook advertising thing, and I put together you can build a similar audience based upon your mailing list, basically. And that I had some success with, but honestly, when it comes to demographic stuff, the age range and the male-female split seems to be the ones that have the biggest impact for me, because I found that most of my readers for some of my series were women, and the ages skewed older. And when I was trying to get the price down for an ad, like price per click or return on investment, all those numbers, I found that if I targeted more directly toward those, I could get about the same performance with a little bit less expenditure. But I'm not an expert in that. I don't have a tremendous amount of experience.
All right, and I've tinkered quite a bit, but not nearly as much as Michael Cooper we had on back in the day. Help my Facebook ads suck. So that may be a book to check out if you have not yet. I've never done it on income. I've definitely, like Joe said, I will do sex, especially if it is a more romance-oriented one. I will just target the guys. And I'm got a standalone sci-fi adventure coming up. It's kind of a sweet romance too. So I'm probably going to target women that are fans of and it's interesting because you can target male authors because women of course, read female authors and vice versa. But I might target only the women that like David Weber's Honor Harrington series or something. So, and it's not that I don't want male readers. It's just that I feel like the women are more responsive on the romancy stuff. And I'm always surprised by how many male readers I have, because I feel like I am very character heavy, and I don't know, there's bombs and stuff going off at the same time. But not to say guys don't like romance, except for Jeff. But so yeah, I found it useful to target age. I think with Joe too, my readers tend to skew above 25, which is interesting because my stuff I've seen it classified as young adult because I think it's not very grim dark and there's not usually a lot of cursing and stuff. But that may just be the demographic that's more on the e-readers right now. I think we've talked before about how some teens in general, generalizing, seem to be more inclined to pick up paperbacks. Definitely target by interest. Definitely. I am irked that I was put it on Twitter the other day that you can't just target, like disallow, because you can choose people that are interested in this, and this, and then people that fall under a certain thing, but you can't just pick people who don't read, or people who don't buy books. That's what I want to be able to put into that slot. But I do interest. I target specific authors if they're on Facebook. Unfortunately, a lot of indie authors don't come up and you can't target them, which is too bad. So I end up doing like David Eddings and, people, trad published authors that have been around for 20 or 30 years that pop up on there. Do I boost posts? All the time. All the time that I'm trying to sell books or get people to my site to like read a free short story or something. I'm actually a big fan of them. For a while they seemed less effective, but they seem to be working pretty well. And what I'll do is I'll let the post run for a couple days and let my regular readers comment and get some good engagement in there first, and then I'll boost it to like an audience that's should be my ideal readers, targeted readers by interest, by age, by sex, and try to get some new folks reading the new book one or the new free story I put up on my website. So that's kind of how I'm doing Facebook right now. None of us are experts, as we mentioned, and we will keep you updated if we get some good guests that want to come on and talk about that stuff. Do you guys have any last thoughts on Facebook before we move on?
I do not.
Nope.
All right. Vanya asks, are you guys planning your calendar for 2019? Will you be at any conferences this year? I missed you at the Sell More Books podcast this year, but I can go next year. That was from me. Do Joe and Jeff attend anything?
Let's see. Am I planning my calendar year for 2019? I've already got 3 mysteries lined up and not quite plotted out, but I know what's going to happen with them. I've got a standalone brand new book in a series coming, not a series, but depending on how well it does, it might be a series coming out I'm working on, that's going to be released. As for attending events, I never personally have. That's not to say I won't ever do it, but it's not really my thing, but you never know.
As for my calendar for next year, I've got at least one book in the can that's going to be released early next year. If NaNoWriMo goes the way it's supposed to, that'll be another one, and I have 2 more that I may be holding on to try to do a rapid release, and we'll see if that's for the end of the year. When it comes to conferences, I've been to a few. Book Expo America is in Jacob Javits, which is in New York City, which is the closest major city to me. So I've been there a couple of times. It's not that indie oriented, so I'm probably not going to keep going. As for the other ones, I mean, I went to a writing like workshop type thing. Lindsay actually recommended me to, and it was very enormously useful. But I'm not much of a traveler, and also I am stunningly oblivious to this sort of thing. So most of the time, I find out about a conference when early bird pricing was 3 weeks ago, and the last ticket just got sold. So I could certainly see going to conferences, but I would sort of have to be in the loop, and I'm not.
All right, well, I'm putting you guys in the loop that the SIFWA conference, because we had Kat on, is in Los Angeles. I think it's Los Angeles. It's in California in May this year, and I'm probably going to go to that one. I've never been, so I want to give it a shot, and it sounded like the panels were pretty good last year, so I don't know if they'll get Data Guy again. That would be awesome, but I'm interested in the other stuff, and that's one I can drive to, so that's pretty exciting. So that's May. If any of you guys are going, let me know, because I don't know anybody going. That's a little more trad published oriented, although I feel like there are a lot of indies now. I've jumped on the forums over there, and lots of indie authors chiming in.
In May, that's far enough out in advance, and I could drive there as well. You never know. I might. That might be my first.
All right. If you guys are thinking of stalking the elusive Jeffrey M. Poole, that may possibly be your chance. And
just bear in mind, I don't look like a normal writer. It's just I'm 6'3". You look at me and like, oh my God, and run the other way. But
maybe they'll mistake you for the bouncer at the entrance.
Probably.
I need to see your SIFWA badge before you can go in, please. All right. As far as what else I'm planning next year for events, I will be at 20 books to 50K this year in Las Vegas. That's another one I can drive to. So it's, I was happy to go back. I know some of the folks that go to that one. And next year, I'm thinking of going to NINC, NINC. I haven't joined yet, so I should probably do that. That's another one where I think you might have to make like $3,000 off a book or something. They want to encourage, I mean, that's not full time, but people who are kind of beyond that real beginner level stuff. So I've heard good things about that one. So I'm thinking of going. It's actually the one this year is coming up here in September, but I had the new puppy. So I was like, I probably can't get away that many times this fall. So those are my ones I'm thinking of doing next year. If you want to come by, let me know. I would be happy to see you. As far as my book calendar, I am someone that makes tentative plans, and then I usually break them or push them back. So I'll be finishing this fantasy mystery series here in 2018. That'll probably take me through the end of the year. I am determined to do Chains of Honor Book 3. I think I'm going to put a pre-order up for like the end of January or the end of February, so I have to do it. And like I said, it's actually, I enjoy the story. It's not like I didn't like it. It's just that I did that stupid thing where I wrote half the book or a third of the book and didn't do an outline. And it's been kind of frustrating to try to get back into it years later. So there's that. And then in 2019, I'm hoping to do a new sci-fi series. I was actually going to do that this year, but got derailed. Imagine that. And maybe do something like, because I had good luck with my Fallen Empire series as far as sales and everything. That was my first KU thing that it really kind of stuck up there for a while. To my surprise, because the whole premise is a mom looking for her daughter, and I thought no guy's going to pick this up, and sci-fi is mostly guy readers, right? So I have the better mailing list built up in that genre because I knew what I was doing a little more, and there's a whole bunch of cool bonus things people can get. So that is probably on my calendar for 2019 is a new sci-fi series. All right, next question from Marina on promos. Is there a deeper marketing reason to choose to run them only on selected markets, or does a worldwide one mean a worldwide bucket of headaches? And I think she specifically was referencing, Joe and I both have BookBub books at the same, being discounted at the same time. I think that was last year, I can't remember, on Amazon.com, but they were full price on Amazon.it. And I kind of answered her in a tweet. It's just that if you do the Kindle Countdown deals, you can set one up for the US store and you can set one up for the UK. And I think that's it right now. Whereas if you do the free book, I just did one for a free book for my pen name. And I did check in Canada and Australia, and I got links for 4 of the stores. They were free. But have you guys are not in KU, have you? Are you right there? I know Jeff isn't.
Dusty. Allergies in here.
I only had one book ever do a Kindle Countdown, and I honestly couldn't remember how it functioned because it was, one time 2 years ago. But I know that, like, when it comes to setting promos, sometimes you can only get a promo in certain international markets. Like, I've gotten international BookBubs, and therefore it's not terribly necessary to be comprehensive and changing your prices. But generally speaking, I just change everything the whole time anyway. Just half the time it's because Amazon will complain if you don't, and half the time it's because it's just easier to say, yes, all of them based on this price. So there's not a lot of times when I find there's value in separating out different markets with different prices.
I don't think it's any more of a headache. It's just, with the Kindle Countdown thing, you're not manually doing it. They're going to do it for you. And it's the markets that they're willing to do. And so if I drew it myself, I will change everything. If for some reason I'm doing a 99-cent thing, like one of Patty Jensen's promos or something for a book, and it's not a Kindle Countdown, it's one of my wide books, I would just go in everywhere and change it. Sometimes a country may get lost in translation. I will try on Amazon to do everybody at 99 cents or the equivalent for their country. So no reason why you shouldn't. It's just that if the Kindle Countdown deal is a special thing if you're in KDP Select. All right, Benjamin, this is for me. He would love to hear about how the blog novel went. Did it impact the launch much? How about blog traffic? Was there a bump in other books via affiliate blog links? I have to say right up, I didn't look at the affiliate stuff, so I don't know if there was any bump. I think I put the affiliate link for that specific book at the end of I did post the whole book. But as far as I do have affiliate links for older books, and they do get clicked. I do make sales whenever I go in there. Somebody bought book 5 in the Dragon Book series through one of my affiliate links, but I didn't check and see if it's been more active. But definitely way more traffic to the blog this summer when I was posting that, because if you've been on my blog, I post 4 times a year now. It's the podcast has kind of replaced and become the place where I get to do my chatting. So I had a lot of hits. I have a plugin on WordPress that I don't remember what it's called, but it shows you how many times the page was loaded, basically. So I had a lot of people check out the first chapter, and then, as you would kind of expect, fewer would continue on. But those who continued on, I had I think 12 to 1,500 people steadily went through the whole thing. The post just shows hits, but I'm assuming if they were bothering, there were 20 chapters, so I assume they were actually reading them if they wanted to go through and look at each of them. And I'm not sure I would do it again for a book I was going to put in KDP Select, because that meant I had to take it down only a couple weeks after finishing posting it, and I don't know if everyone even got to read it. So I think if I did it again in the future, it would be for a book I was going to make wide as a series starter, and that way I could just leave it on my blog indefinitely, because that's kind of what a blog is, right? You want hits 2 years from now that randomly somebody stumbled on a Google search and oh, what's this? So I don't regret it, but I don't know if I will do it again. I don't think it impacted the launch. The launch was kind of weird because I forgot to mention this in the news. Have you seen that BookBub now does a new release alert thing? I assume you got the email. Have you guys contemplated that at all?
I've seen it. I haven't really looked into it yet.
I saw it, and you and I spoke about it briefly, and it seems I probably won't be messing with it.
Yeah, it was $420 for a fantasy book, and
Jesus. Excuse me.
and I thought that would be fine for one of their usual deals. That'd be awesome, because I think it's $700 something now for a 99-cent book. And I thought my book was launching at 99 cents, so I thought, well, it'll probably do pretty good. So what happened was I kept waiting for the email to go out, but it goes out in the afternoon. I think it's once a week, and they put a couple of books in there from that genre. And they didn't put the prices, which I can understand, because they're allowing people with $5.99 books or whatever to do it too. And I just was waiting for a bump and waiting for a bump, and it was so negligible. I'm afraid I didn't notice it, so I won't be using that again. I love BookBub, their typical daily, the deals if you can get the sponsored stuff. But this one didn't pan out for me, and I was wishing I had that $400 back to just put into their pay-per-click or CPM ads. So I won't be doing it for my next book. But as a result of that, what they did is, how you can go into BookBub, you guys have probably done this, and let them know you have a new release, and they'll send it out to your followers. Jeff's nodding. I don't know. Joe's nodding.
Oh yeah, I've done it.
Okay. And I find that great, because I think I've got 8,000 followers on there now. So it's almost like another little, like how your Amazon followers get alerted, all the places, if you can stagger things for launch, it's great. So I usually, with that BookBub thing, I wait till almost a week. And so then I go in so I can get a little boost later on. Well, they, as part of the package, promoted it the exact day of the launch, which was cool. But it basically meant that with this launch, everything, my newsletter and everything, went out within 2 days, and I got to the highest in the store I think I've ever been, but it was sort of blowing it all at once and not having that nice, despite I tried to get some Amazon ads going. So I, just overall, it didn't work that great for me this time. I'm sure it sold some books, but because I had other things going on, it wasn't that noticeable for the money. So just, if you have money and want to try it, go ahead, but be aware that if you usually report later that you have a new release and they send it out to your followers, they will actually report on the day of the release as part of the package there. All right, let's move on, because you guys couldn't even answer that question, so that was no fun. I've got one from Oscar for you guys. He's got two, actually. First is, which writing craft books help or have helped you?
As for me, the one I started out with is when I very first started doing this. I forget the name of the title. I've got the book still lying around here somewhere. It's the one essentially how to help self-edit, which made me realize that, oh my God, I suck at this, and so to go find an editor. But that was the one I was following religiously when I first started out. But that's only only real one I've actually ever used.
Early on, I didn't read a lot of craft books before I started, so my first practice at writing was just writing a spectacular amount and then putting some of it out. But since then, on my brother's recommendation, I read On Writing by Stephen King, and it's like half memoir, half writing advice, and it's very good. I don't follow every rule religiously because it's like I've already written a book that did reasonably well and did all of the things you told me not to do, so I'll skip this chapter. But overall, like it really helps craft a story. Yeah, On Writing by Stephen King.
All right, I'm going to be a loser. I've got nothing to recommend you guys. I am somebody who learns by doing, tactile learner. So I love the writing workshops. I loved getting critiqued. I loved critiquing other people. And I really learned a lot by just kind of learning from other people who were a little farther along. You know, they'd already made some pro sales, had a book with an agent. And so that's how I learned. And I still love workshops for that kind of thing. Because for me, I can read something in a book, but applying it to my own stuff or even remembering what I read and finding it, applying it in it for it to be useful, probably not. So I know there's a lot of great ones out there, and if you are somebody who can learn that way, excellent. But I just loved the workshop I feel like I learned so much that way. All right, Oscar also asked, what does your outlining process look like?
As for me, I pull out a big empty notebook. I pretty much jot down what I know is going to happen with the story, just a basic plot points for every single chapter. And then I'll go through as I get to each chapter, fill out the beats, put exactly what I want to happen. If I'm going to put a little bit of dialogue here, action scene here, and fill it out as I go to it. But my outlining process is I know what's going to happen to the book. I know how to get from point A to point B. And then as I write each chapter, then I can have some fun with the chapter because I know full well how it starts and how it needs to end. And the journey to get there might be a little bit different. It might vary a little bit, but that's how I do it.
The way I do it is when I very frequently I pants things. Even when I'm trying to outline things, I will sometimes get halfway through an outline, and then the outline will just grow into the entire book, and I'll just have to rewrite the beginning. But when I'm actually outlining correctly, I basically start with where I want to start and end with where I want to end, just as like 2 beats. And then I will put in between like a couple of major events that I want. And then I'll just keep on creating more dots and connecting them until I have sort of no more holes. And then I will go to anything that it's not immediately clear how I would do that. I'll go and do a next level down and start filling those in. And then once I have a complete story, like I can tell from beginning to end how things go, I start collecting them together into a significant amount of time or travel needs to occur between these 2 scenes. So that's where chapter break is. And then once I have all that done, it makes a very fast writing process. But I have genuinely only done that level of outlining maybe 3 times out of the 20 or so books that I've written. So I'm not the best plotter in the world.
It's always interesting with this question how different writers will be. I am like, my brain hurts when I see people like throw up a whiteboard and do like, what do you call it when you like got arrows and lines everywhere? Just brainstorming. I don't know. There's a term for that kind of diagram. It's like,
brain
ow,
mapping or something like that.
ow. I got to do it in chronological order. First I start with kind of like, okay, what do I want to happen in the book? What's like the major climactic thing going to be? And once I know that, I go back and like, okay, where's the story start? And then I just write chapter 1, chapter 2, chapter 3. And, it can be anywhere from a couple sentences to I'll do half of a scene with like in a chapter. And it's just, that's how my brain works. Everything has to be in chronological order and logical. It drives me nuts when I'm reading somebody else's book and there's like time jumps. Like they go back in time to pick up another POV. I'm like, yeah, you're making my brain hurt. Why are we backwards in time?
Let me guess. I envision your study where you do all the writing, like a little colored yarn going from one wall to the next. And
no, that's exactly what I can't stand. I have to write it 1, 2, 3, 4. I just write it in chronological order. I'm not a huge 3-act structure kind of person. Like possibly that may be in there on accident. I always keep that image in mind of like, There's kind of a mountain when you're going up it, and then there's a denouement. That's at the end. Whatever it's called, it's like gradually rising tension, right? Everything's sort of building towards the climax, and you've got some quiet scenes in there, but it's always going upward to like whatever your epic finale is going to be. So that's sort of in the back of my head, but I just sit down and write what happens in an order. And when I'm actually writing, it just varies from book to book as to, sometimes I really stick closely to the outline and I look at it often. I'm doing that kind of with this mystery series because there's more things to make sure that you had clues, like stuff to follow. They're not like hardcore mystery, but there's that element. So I'm paying attention more to my outlines. But other times I look at it once and then I just kind of do my own thing to get there to the end. But I still find outlining helpful for me. And it definitely sped up the writing process once I started doing that. All right. This is Jim, by the way. Thank you for the question. What's your best advice for picking a novel's title?
Usually I come up with a title I like, and then I'll Google it to make sure no one else is using that same title for something else, regardless if it's a magazine, an article, book title, movie, TV show, episode, whatever. I come up with your title, then make sure no one else is using it.
Yeah, checking to see if your title has been used is a very good idea. I have not done that in the past, and it turns out there are 2 Book of Deacons. Not including mine. There's one that you can't even find anymore, but then there's a football player's autobiography that is called The Book of Deacon, but it's got a subtitle and mine does not. That being said, the way I do things is for every series, I try to follow the same sort of format for the title. So like the Book of Deacon series, it's always it starts with the, and it's a thing. So like the Book of Deacon, the Great Convergence, the Battle of Verrill, the Decaran Apprentice. It's that sort of thing. For the sci-fi, it's 2-word titles that are both sort of sciencey. So Bypass Gemini, Unstable Prototypes, Temporal Contingency, stuff like that. And then just try to follow along in that way. And also, I try to make sure that the title implies something near the end. But not overtly. So obviously you're not just going to spoil a plot point in your title, but basically I like my title to be an important enough thing in the story that when you start seeing it within the story, you're getting close to something big. So the Battle of Verrill, I mean, 3rd book in the series, once you hear Verrill, you're like, oh, something big's about to happen. Like that's the sort of thing I try to go with when I do titles. And again, make sure no one's taken them before, especially not somebody in a completely different genre that will confuse people.
You guys are like, I don't care if anybody's used the title before, man. I do go and look on Amazon usually if it's somebody that's like a huge seller, I probably will avoid it then. Like if Patrick Roth has already used the title, I probably won't. But like if it's somebody like, oh, I can rank higher than them. They've only got like 3 reviews on their books. I don't even sweat it. But I would be careful with making up. We've talked about this before. If fantasy sci-fi guys, we like to make up planets and worlds and things, and then we put our title and there's an apostrophe, Akarashima. Don't do that stuff. Not for your book 1 anyway. Like you can get away with it deeper in the series, but for anybody who's recommending your book word of mouth, it's going to be impossible for somebody that hears it to go and then find the book. And do not dismiss that. I cannot tell you how often I've had people tell me they recommend my books to their friends, which is awesome. It's like the best marketing ever. And I was just doing new covers from one of my old series that I never ever promote this series. And I was like pleasantly surprised to kind of look at this. A good 150 copies of the book sell. Each book in the series sell each month, at $5, even though I do nothing. And that's a series where they're just people finding it after reading my other series or on word of mouth. So don't dismiss how great it is to have people remember spell everything and remember it. I don't usually do it, but alliteration can be a great way to make something memorable. Coca-Cola is not only alliteration, but there's some other word for when things kind of rhyme or go together like that. So that's more branding kind of thing. But for a series name, it wouldn't hurt if something pops into your head and you're like, oh, they happen to both start with the letter C. That might help. But the big thing is I just would avoid anything that it's going to be hard for people to spell. Later in the series, you can get away with it. Battle of Verrill. Verrill's not too bad. I've seen some stuff with apostrophes that you're just like, what is that?
Well, the next book is the Decaran Apprentice, and there's an apostrophe in there. So But those are books 3 and 4, so
Yeah,
you guys
okay.
have already read the first ones.
All right. I will, speaking from personal experience, probably don't try to be clever. I have one called Angle of Truth, which I thought was great for this story, but everyone's like, oh, you misspelled your title. It's Angel of Truth. I'm like, what the heck is, no, it's not angel. There's no angels in my universe. Go away. So being clever may not be as helpful as you think. All right, moving on. Erica asks, how do you decide what genre to list your book in if it's a little bit of everything? You guys want to answer that? I kind of already answered it earlier.
Yeah, it's just, I mean, I personally don't really have to worry about it too much. Mine has either been strongly in like epic fantasy or obviously my mystery series is mystery, crime, cozy mystery, whatever there. You just got to be careful when you're picking a genre that, now if you say, oh, this is going to be romance, and there might be 1 or 2 scenes as romance and that's it, you don't want to give your readers a false expectation, or else they will ding in the reviews.
Yeah, I've found when I have stuff that's pretty broad, and I have a couple of books that stretch across multiple genres. I try to go with, well, first off, you can choose multiple genres. So like most places have at least 2 main genres, and if it falls neatly into science fiction and fantasy, I'll choose both. But broadly speaking, I choose the one that is less strict. So like, you can get away with a lot more stuff in fantasy than you can in sci-fi. So if you're going to have a book with a lot of magic in it and you put it under sci-fi, you might get people complaining. Whereas if you have a lot of technology but also magic, then the fantasy people will be like, okay, fine, it's magic with technology. So the more accepting audience are the ones that I stick the genre for.
I would probably just go with whatever is closest. You can pick more than 2. You can use the Amazon keywords to get into categories that aren't listed on the dashboard. Just Google like Amazon select browse categories. I think if you Google that, there's a big old list of stuff, like how to get into like some stuff that's not on there. Like I think dragons and mythological creatures, you have to put dragons as the keyword. Imagine that. But yeah, I would just go for put as many as qualify, that you think in your head. You'll see all kinds of books that are in categories that shouldn't be there, but sometimes when you're not really any of the things, you just got to do the best. And we've talked about it before, I would probably pick one, whatever you're closest to, and then kind of make the title and the blurb and the cover fit as much as, without fudging anything, to appeal hopefully to people that are looking in that category. It's always a challenge with the kind of the cross-genre stuff, and it is what it is. You're just going to have an easier time if it's solidly in a category, but we got to write what we got to write. Okay, how have we been talking so long, guys? Just a few more to go here. Risa asks, how do you guys get a universal link for one of your Amazon books, or do you not bother? Specifically, a link that will send UK readers to the UK store, US readers to the US, etc. Or do you provide links for all the separate stores in different countries when you promote the book?
Well, as the little notes in our notes say, I personally use the books2read.com. I create an account, and that way, yes, it's going to show you all the retailers there, but I don't have anything targeting every single one of them. Just when you go to my website, click on one of the titles, up pops the book to read link, and you select the retailer you want, and it takes it from there. So. And not only that, once you create an account with Books to Read, then you can even rename the link. So you can, like in my case, Bakken Chronicles Book 1. I can do the Books to Read / BC1. It's going to take you right there. So that's what I did.
Yeah, for the longest time, I would have separate links for all the main ones. Well, on my website, I would have, here's where you can buy it at Amazon, and then it would be like parentheses US, UK, blah, blah, blah. But yeah, Books to Read has made that all much, much simpler. So that's what I do.
I've started using them too, and it's books2read.com. It's a free service. I think it's Drafted Digital that runs it. So yeah, make up an account. And then not only that, you can see how many people clicked the link and all that good stuff. And I double checked before the show. You can make an Amazon one that will direct people to like Amazon Italy, to the other stores. So check those guys out if you have not yet. All right, Bryce, I would love to hear an updated list of which promo sites you guys are using right now.
I've used the e-reader news today. I've used BookBub. I've been trying to get an actual BookBub ad, but thus far, those little turkeys aren't liking me too much. So that's only really the ones I use at the moment.
I've been pretty lax with my site-based promotions, but I have a book bub coming up. I was successful at one of those. Book Barbarian, Fussy Librarian, and yeah, ENT are the ones that I mostly use.
Yeah, there's quite a few out there, and there's always new ones popping up. I kind of wait until other people try them these days. I used to run them more when, like a couple hundred extra downloads of a free book could actually make a difference. So, but I typically, of course, also the book bubs I try to get. E-reader News Today is still one I go to often. I'll do Free Booksy or Bargain Booksy now and then. In the past, I've used Book Barbarian and Robin Reads. It's just that those guys, you usually have to book something a couple months out. The last time I looked, they tended to be like you had to plan ahead more than I usually do for promotions. I plan promotions, and I'm like, oh, sales kind of suck this month. Let's see what we can do before the end of the month to give it a little boost. And then Fussy Librarian too is relatively inexpensive. We've had them on the show before, so I haven't used them for a while. You know what? I have to admit, I'm less likely to use the places that require you to rewrite your blurb and won't just use what's from Amazon. I'm like, oh, work. So I have started, once I do a little like short mini blurb, pasting it into some notes so that I can use it again at another time. But those are the kind of the ones I can continue to hear pretty good things about, and that I've also used within the last year. All right, John asks, a lot of the book funnel Insta freebie group promos I see all have the same group of books, even if there is a theme to the promo. Have you seen anyone having success doing a more targeted and small group promo? So I think I'm interpreting this as like he mostly sees like a big, huge blanket sci-fi group and authors getting together and promoting a bunch of free sci-fi books. I've used InstaFreebie only once, and we had them on the show, and it's perfectly legitimate and a good thing to do, especially if you're starting out. But I don't have much experience with it, so I would just say yes, but you probably have to be the one to spearhead it and then go collect your we all do military fantasy authors. I think it could work really well if it's a little niche group. Have you guys used them, and do you have any thoughts?
Not for that, I haven't, no.
I've been in a couple of giveaways like this, and generally speaking, bigger is better, just because, you throw a wider net, you catch more. I've been in a few smaller ones, never anything particularly small. That said, the very narrow targeting sometimes can work pretty well. I've been in some short story style collections of that sort of thing, and it's like, I forget exactly how they phrased it, but it was like clean fantasy, like fantasy for all ages type thing, not necessarily young adult, but just like you're not going to find something objectionable within these books. And it was pretty effective. I saw like a reasonable, it moved the needle a little bit for the books that were surrounding the one that I included. So narrow targeting can help with small, but generally speaking, bigger is better in my experience.
All right. And one final question. I guess it's going to be for me. You guys aren't doing Patreon yet, are you, Joe and Jeff? No Patreon?
Not yet. Possibly very soon, but not yet. Okay.
Sarah wanted to know how my Patreon is going. Do I have any tips or anything I do differently? Because she just started one up. And mine is going. It's about $1,100 or $1,200 whenever I give them a new book, or whenever I charge them, I should say. I didn't do the monthly thing because folks who have been listening will remember I set it up as a way to kind of send out early releases before I put something in KDP. So I wasn't really trying to make a whole bunch of money. I just wanted to give people an option if they're like Nook or Kobo people and were understandably displeased that they couldn't get my new releases. At least now they can get them, and I use the book funnel links. So, and that ends up being about, I think there's about 150 people in that, accounting for that money that get the books early. So it doesn't really affect my launches at all, which is kind of, I think, probably good. I think people may have wondered, well, if I do it that way, am I going to dilute the launch power on Amazon? So, and it's kind of nice because I feel like I know these are some diehard fans that are just like willing, whatever I write, they're going to pay me for it. So it's sort of a neat group of people in that way. Not that other people aren't, because there's a lot of people that just don't want to deal with the hassle of not automatically having it delivered by Amazon on the release date, right? So it's going fine. I think if I wanted to make more money, I would write original stuff for Patreon rather than books that they could get anyway just from Amazon. These are just kind of those people that are like, okay, I'd like to support you, or I'd like to get the book early because I'm on Kobo. So there are other authors that make a lot more and by doing original stuff. So that's kind of up to you. If you have a fan base and you're like, I'm not publishing novels that often, I'd like to supplement that income by monthly money from Patreon. Maybe I can do a short story or something. I'm always careful at this point I don't want to give myself more work for something that is not going to have a good payoff. Yet somehow I keep saying yes to anthologies. Guys, be careful with anthologies. But so far it's going well. I would probably take another look at it. Next year when I shift to sci-fi, it may be a different people that are interested. Some of the fantasy people may fade away. We'll see with that. And I'm thinking of sending out signed copies of the new paperback to I've got some folks supporting at $25, which I think is too much money to pay for ebooks. So I want to give them something extra. I do think I actually started following Kat Rambo after she was on the show, or supporting her on Patreon, and she does regular blog posts on there just for her Patreon folks, and I actually really like that. So I'm thinking maybe I'll start doing a blog or something on there. I've gotten tips, if you want from her. She mentioned Dragon World, whatever, Worldcon in Dublin is looking for panelists. So if you want to be on a panel, here's where you sign up. Things that I'm like Joe and Jeff, I'm barely aware of stuff like that, conference related, convention related, going out there. So it's nice to hear from somebody that is. So yeah, go support her on Patreon for, I think she's got $1 a month thing. But Jeff's dog is hungry, so I guess I have to stop rambling, is what he's trying to tell me. Do you guys have anything you'd like to plug before we go for the day, the week?
I've pretty much covered everything at the beginning, so nothing for me. Just thanks for listening, everybody. For me, anyways.
As for me, like I said, I just released The Adventures of Russell and Eddie. So if you'd like an ostensibly young adult story about a merman and a fairy, you can buy that. My Fallen Empire story in Lindsay's setting is going to be coming back after Kindle Worlds took it down. So that's going to be next month, and there's a pre-order up. So that's Rogue Derelict, if you're interested. And other than that, keep your ears open for if and when I start my Patreon.
All right. Thanks for listening, guys. I won't plug any of my stuff other than say next month we're going to chat. I haven't told the guys yet. I want to talk a little bit about how you market a standalone book, since I will be releasing one and can talk about my experience at that point. And I think the guys have done some of that stuff too. So, or at least it was standalone when it was book one, all right? The Corgi Mystery Murders. All right.
It was.
Thanks for listening, everyone, and have a great week.
All right. Take it easy, everyone.
So long, everybody.